The chamber fell silent the moment the translator finished speaking. Captain Jonah Reed stood perfectly still at the center of the crystalline hall, aware that several hundred non-human eyes were fixed on him. Above, light refracted through layered crystal arches, painting the air in slow-moving colors that shifted with emotional resonance. This was not a place for sudden movements or careless words. Across from him stood Valeth of the Kherai, a towering, luminous being whose form resembled a blend of flowing light and structured armor. Her people were ancient, methodical, and famously difficult to understand. Jonah had trained for first contact scenarios for years, but nothing in the briefing materials had prepared him for what she had just said. "Will you be my mate?" The words echoed in his mind, even as the hall remained hushed. Jonah did not answer immediately. That alone caused a ripple of tension among the gathered Kherai elders, their bioluminescent markings flickering in subtle patterns. Silence meant many things in human culture. Among the Kherai, it could mean offense or catastrophe. Ambassador Lyra Chen, standing a careful distance behind Jonah, cleared her throat softly. "Captain," she murmured, barely moving her lips, "this may not mean what it sounds like." Jonah took a slow breath. He reminded himself of the rules. Do not assume, do not project human meaning, do not react emotionally. This was not a personal moment. It was history unfolding. "Esteemed Valeth," Jonah said carefully, his voice steady, "I want to be sure I understand your words correctly. Could you explain what you mean by mate?" Valeth inclined her head, a gesture that signaled approval. The light patterns along her form softened. "Among the Kherai," she said, "a mate is not chosen for reproduction alone. A mate is a bonded counterpart, one whose presence alters probability, stabilizes decision-making, and allows shared governance of fate." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Jonah felt his pulse quicken, not with fear, but with realization. This was not a proposal of romance. This was something far larger. "You are asking for an alliance," he said slowly. "Yes," Valeth replied, "but not between governments. Between individuals." The Kherai were not a species that trusted easily. They believed large systems failed because responsibility was diluted. To them, progress occurred when two compatible minds carried shared weight. Jonah glanced briefly at Ambassador Chen. Her expression had shifted from concern to astonishment. "Captain," she whispered, "do you understand what this means?" He did. Or at least he was beginning to. Weeks earlier, the human expedition had arrived at the Kherai homeworld expecting tense negotiations over a region of unstable space known as the Fracture Belt. The Kherai controlled technology capable of stabilizing it, technology they had refused to share with any civilization for over 10,000 cycles. Humanity, still relatively young on the galactic stage, had been invited not because of strength or influence, but because of something the Kherai found unsettling. Humans adapted too quickly. They formed bonds across difference. They changed strategies mid-failure. They accepted uncertainty without paralysis. Valeth had observed Jonah throughout the negotiations, how he listened more than he spoke, how he acknowledged risk without attempting to dominate it. In him, she had sensed compatibility. "Why me?" Jonah asked, returning his gaze to her. "Because you are incomplete," Valeth said plainly. "And so am I." The translator rendered the phrase gently, but the meaning was clear. Among the Kherai, incompleteness was not an insult. It was a prerequisite for partnership. The elders waited. Jonah knew that declining outright could fracture relations permanently. Accepting blindly could bind him to something he did not understand. Humanity had made mistakes like that before. "I will not answer yet," he said. "Not until I understand the consequences." Valeth's lights flared briefly, surprise, then respect. That is acceptable, she said.
Come.
Learn. Thus began Jonah Reed's education in what it truly meant to be a mate. Over the cycles that followed, Jonah was granted access no human had ever received. He walked the resonance paths, vast structures where Kherai pairs synchronize their thoughts to solve problems beyond individual cognition. He observed how bonded partners shared responsibility, not through emotion, but through trust and accountability. Valeth guided him without condescension. She explained that Kherai partnerships were not permanent by obligation, but by continued choice. If alignment failed, bonds dissolved peacefully. There is no possession, she told him as they watched the stabilization engines pulse beneath the planet's surface. Only shared direction. Jonah found the concept unsettling and comforting in equal measure. As days turned into weeks, the fracture belt worsened. Unstable gravity waves began threatening nearby systems, human and Kherai alike. The conclave convened in emergency session. Solutions proposed by single minds failed repeatedly. Finally, Valeth stood before the assembly. We require a bonded decision, she said. One Kherai, one human. The implication was clear. Jonah felt the weight of it settle onto his shoulders, not as pressure, but as clarity. This was why he had been chosen. Not because he was exceptional, but because he was willing to carry uncertainty alongside someone else. He stepped forward. I will accept, he said, if the bond is one of shared responsibility, not control. Valeth extended her hand, or what most closely resembled one. Light gathered between them, forming a delicate lattice. Then answer me again, she said, her voice resonant and calm. Will you be my mate? Jonah placed his hand into the light. Yes, he said. The bond did not overwhelm him. There was no rush of emotion, no loss of self. Instead, there was perspective. He sensed Valeth's thought patterns, vast, patient, attuned to long timelines. In return, she felt his adaptive, intuitive, grounded in lived experience. Together, they approached the problem of the fracture belt. Not as rulers, not as saviors, as partners. Their combined insight produced a solution neither species could have reached alone, a dynamic stabilization field that adjusted in real time, guided by probabilistic intuition rather than fixed calculation. Within days, the belt quieted. Systems stabilized. Lives were saved. The galaxy noticed. Some praised the alliance. Others feared it. A human and an alien bound in decision-making challenged every traditional model of power. But the results were undeniable. When Jonah eventually returned to Earth, he did not do so alone. Valeth accompanied him, not as an emissary, not as a symbol, but as a counterpart. Together, they advised, mediated, and reminded every council they entered that cooperation did not require sameness. Years later, when asked by a young cadet what it had felt like when Valeth first asked that question, Jonah smiled. It wasn't a romance, he said. It was an invitation to share responsibility, to stand beside someone different, to choose partnership over control. And when Valeth once again looked at him, light pattern steady, presence unwavering, Jonah understood the full meaning of that moment in the crystalline hall. She had not asked him to belong to her. She had asked him to build a future with her. And that choice, freely given and continually renewed, changed not just two lives, but the direction of the galaxy itself.